make a start, shall we? Because the stenciling takes quite a while, and then what I wanted to show you was how to cut a cover piece like this in vellum, but so that it matches the stenciling underneath. Okay, because I know people are having problems lining it up. So we'll come to that as and when. We'll do the stenciling first, but if I just run through what I'm going to be using. And we're using the layering stencils, the layering butterfly. When I first saw this, I just fell in love with it. I think it's the most beautiful thing. You can do it flat, you can do it 3D. We're also using the Crazy Paint embossing folder, and that's just to add some interest to the finished card. We're using the bold phrases, and then we're using the Simply Heartfelt, and obviously I'm using the bubble squares because I use these such a lot. Okay, so let's get into our stenciling. Just move my dies out of the way. And we'll start with layer 1. Now I'm gonna try and do sort of the colour in the way I like to do it, because I know I've seen posts from people who've said, yeah, I've bought this die set and it's lovely, but I'm no good at colouring. You don't have to be brilliant at colouring to use these layering stencils. That's the beauty of them. So I'm starting off with spun sugar. These are all Distress Oxides. Okay, so I'm going in with spun sugar first because I want this layer to be quite soft. You're not going to see very much of this layer, if I'm honest, because we're going to cover it over with lots of other pinks and a little bit of green as well. So there's my first layer. Then I'm going in with Kitsch Flamingo, and I wanted all these to be pinks with a hint of green. I'm using Peacock Feathers as my green, and it will all coordinate with the rest of the card. Okay, the rest of the card is sort of more or less done because the stenciling does take quite a little while. Okay, so that's my Kitsch Flamingo. Now before I take this one off, I am going to just darken these antennae, and I'm going to use the Peacock Feathers only because this is the last die that sort of shows the antennae, and I want these to sort of stand out but be a different colour from the rest of the butterfly. Now you can see when I've added that Peacock Feathers, it's changed the colour. It isn't really a green, it's more of a sort of a purple, to be honest. But what I'm also going to do is just swipe this up into the body a little bit and down from the top, just to add a little bit of extra colour into the middle, into the body there. I'll come back to the green in a second. So that's my layer 1. Okay, then we're going in with layer 2. Why did I do that on layer 2? Never mind. I've done layer 2 already with layer 1, but I will just go over that again because I want it to be quite dark, because the picked raspberry is quite a dark pink, and I want this to be a really sort of deep pink. I want it to be pinks, but really quite a deep colour. So that's my Kitsch Flamingo with number 2. Then we're going in with number 3. Now on number 3, I'm going to go in with my Peacock Feathers. Okay, now that sounds a little bit weird, but bear with. Right, so we're going in with Peacock Feathers, as I said, and I am going in really light. And if you see where I'm holding the stencil brush, you can see that I'm not going to have a heavy touch with this because I'm holding it so far up the barrel that there won't be any weight behind this. Okay, and I'm literally brushing off the mylar into the pink. I'm picking my colour up off what I've left on the stencil and just brushing from the middle outwards. I'm not covering the whole of the wing, just the bottom part, the middle, and slightly across the top. And again the other side exactly the same. Now you can see this doesn't look very peacock featherish. It looks quite sort of a bluey purple, but that's what you get when you're mixing inks, especially oxides, because they do blend so beautifully and they give you so many different other colours that it's a palette all on its own, really. Okay, so I'm gonna probably come back in with this peacock feathers later. All right, so that's my number 3. Okay, it just gives you some shading around the wings, and we're going to do exactly the same with number 4 on the bottom wings, and we're also going to use the same colour. So we're going with number 4 and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to put the ink onto our stencil so that we can pick up the ink off the stencil rather than off the ink pad. That way we don't get too much ink. As I say, the stenciling takes a while, especially if you're sort of doing something a little bit different and you're not just following a stencil, if you know what I mean. I mean, normally before I started doing stuff like this, I would have probably filled these wings with a completely different colour, but now I don't like adding solid colour all the way through. I like to shade so that it looks a little bit different. Okay, yeah, happy with that. So number 4, we will probably go back to number 4 as well, and then we're coming in with number 5. Okay, now with number 5 I'm going in with Picked Raspberry. Now Picked Raspberry is really quite a deep pink. Okay, so on layer 5 what I'm going to do is I'm using, as I said, Picked Raspberry, and again not much pressure with the brush, but I'm going to actually brush on the mylar rather than into the stencil aperture. Okay, and what that will do is give me shading either side of the lines where the mylar is, without filling those spaces with solid colour. Okay, and you can go in and add more colour afterwards if you want to, which I may well do, but I just like this. If I just lift that up and show you, you can see there is colour there but not solid colour. It sort of blends out and then blends back in again, and I really like that effect. And the beauty of the Ultimate is that I can take this off as many times as I like to check my progress, and I'm just not going to lose my place. I'm going to get it in the same place every time I put it back. It's just a genius piece of kit. Okay, let's have a look, see what that looks like. Yeah, I like that. Now then, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to go back with number 3. I'm just going to add a little bit more detail on the bottoms of those wings, and you'll see why when I lift it back off. So again, I'm using a stencil brush, but I'm going in with a smaller stencil brush this time, and I am only going along the edge of this the bottom of the aperture. Okay, I'm not going anywhere else, just along that bottom there. So most of my ink is on my stencil rather than on the actual aperture. You can always bring your ink off the aperture and just go a little bit deeper in if you want to, but if you start off on the mylar rather than on the stencil, you'll get the desired effect. I might go in and add a little bit more pink, we'll see. I think I will. So I'm going to go in with the Picked Raspberry because it's the darkest, and again I'm just going right on the edge. Don't worry about the fact that you're going over a green with a pink, it just adds to the effect. Because what I'm actually looking for is that this top wing looks as though it's sitting proud of the bottom wing. Okay, and by doing this you should get that effect. Yeah, I really like that. I think what I might do is go a little bit deeper with the Picked Raspberry. Okay, and the reason I want to go a little bit deeper is because when I come to put the dies over the top to cut these bits out, I want to be able to see it through the vellum that I'm going to be putting over the top. So I'm going to show you with a plain piece of vellum, so it's a white piece, but you can do it with a coloured vellum, which I've obviously already done because you've seen that. But I know the lady that asked me about cutting in vellum said she'd wasted so much paper excuse me, practicing cutting these details out. She'd wasted so much paper, and all I'd say is don't try not to practice too much, because if you just go for it, you'll fare a lot better. And practicing with paper is not going to be the same as practicing with vellum, okay? Because vellum is a very thin medium, it's going to react totally different to paper, okay? I've cut these details several times now in vellum and they match up each time. So try not to practice with paper. If you're going to practice with anything, buy some cheap vellum and practice with that. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, so we've done our stenciling, and I think you'll agree that it looks stunning as it is. Yeah. I just think if you practice with shading rather than solid colour all the time, you'll get more of a soft feathery effect. Now if you see here, you can see that there's a definite line here that makes these top wings look as though they're above the lower wings. I don't know whether you can see that. I don't know whether I can get it close enough to the camera without it blurring. I'll just wait for it to catch up. Yeah, so here you can see there's a definite line under here, and that just gives that illusion of shadow. The top wings look as though they're sitting in front of the lower wings, okay? And it's just practice, trust me. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it, okay? So don't give up on the first attempt, just keep going. It's only paper at the end of the day, and you can always use it for something else. Right, so what I would then do is cut out that butterfly. Put your butterfly down, tape it down so as it doesn't move, because that's the last thing you want. And don't forget that there's a little 2mm offset on these dies, okay? So if I just run that through, okay, so there's my butterfly. Now I'm going to use that butterfly to cut out the detail parts so that my vellum's got like holes at the top that will sit over the top of this, okay? Now I used green, and I'm going to use green today because it matches the rest of my card. But if I put this down, you can see that whilst it's virtually spot on, there is a little bit that is just not quite lined up. So you can see that inside these little apertures here, you can see where I've inked to. I don't know whether it's there. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap, right? Now I know this is what is worrying Karen, the lady that's asked me. Karen, please don't let it worry you, because when you've put your card together and you've put your butterfly on here, it's not going to fit flat over your shaping, over your shading, okay? So it's not going to be as obvious as you're making it look. So by putting a piece of paper flat on the top, you're showing up any imperfections in the accuracy of your cutting. Don't worry about it, it really isn't going to matter. So I've done another one here, and this one's not as bad. It's just a little bit of trial and error because you're not going to get them spot on every time, okay? But I will show you how I've done mine so that you know. Now I'm using clear vellum here to try and make it more obvious on the camera, okay? So I've cut my butterfly shape out and I've lined it up with the butterfly I've just stenciled, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these on top so that I can cut these out. Now when you're lining them up, remember that all your dies have like a little offset, and if you line your dies up, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this, if I'm honest. If I put it on here so as I can hold it up. So I've got my vellum butterfly there. Now I'm going to line this up, and I'm going to make sure that it's sitting inside my inking where I've done my stenciling. Okay, and the same with the other one. So I'm going to add that one on there and make sure that it's lined up. And when you're matching them up, I would try and match the shapes of the wings on either side. Okay, so match these little ruffles here, which is going to give you your shapes inside. Try and match those so that they're level with one another. Okay, that way at least your apertures are level with each other, even if they're not quite level with the stenciling underneath. Okay, so having placed those down, I'm then going to put some tape on top so that they don't move. I'll come down a little bit with that. It's trial and error. It's never going to look 100% spot on. Please don't expect it to, because it's just not going to happen. Okay, so pop that on there. Now you're sticking it to the vellum. All right, where's my other dies gone? Aha. And I'm going to do exactly the same with these down here. Now if I show you this, can you see these? If I show you on the other butterfly, can you see these stenciled pieces here? These 4 little points are going to sit proud of your wing die cut here. Okay, can you see that? So they're going to sit slightly proud of the end of these ruffles here. As I put it in the right place, you'll be able to see it. Can you see that? Yeah, and that's what you're looking for through the vellum. So you're looking for those 4 little points to sit in the center of those little ruffles. Okay, so that's why I wanted the pink to be reasonably dark so that I could see through it. And if you try and line it up so that you've got a gap around here and a gap around here, and that piece there is sitting parallel to the shape of the wing underneath. That's the other reason that I wanted to put that shade in underneath that top wing, so that it gives you somewhere to line this piece up with. So if I leave that one there and then do the same with the other one on the other side, and again, if you line it up with the shape of the top wing, you should find that the points will just sit proud of the ruffles on the wing shapes. Okay, and again, add your tape down so that it's sticking to the vellum. Now don't do what I've done several times. Don't forget to take your stenciled piece out from underneath. Otherwise you'll end up with all these cut out as well, and you don't want that. And trust me, I've done it several times. So I'm just gonna see if I can make sure that's not going to move. This one might not be totally accurate, but we'll go with it. Okay, I'm going to put a piece of paper over the top, put my other plate on, and then run it through, and then take these off gently, because you don't want to rip the vellum. This is the only thing with vellum, is it is very sort of unforgiving. It's delicate, so remember to treat it as such. So there's my vellum top. I'll just put this to one side, and then if I place this on top of my butterfly, you'll be able to see that hopefully it's lined up reasonably well. And see, this one hasn't worked as well as the green one, probably because I'm rushing a little bit, and I knew that one would move. I knew that had moved, right? Okay, but really don't worry about it. As I've said, when you put everything together, people aren't going to be looking for how accurate your top to the stenciling is, I promise you. Okay, so I'm just going to go with one of the green ones because it was actually green that I wanted to use, but for demo purposes that's why I went with the clear, because it's easier to line up. So if you're going to practice this, I'd practice it with a clear vellum. You see this one still is not perfect. If you were going to stick this down, it's going to stand out. There's no two ways about it. But it's not going to go flat. I'm not going to put it down flat, so it's not going to be that obvious. Okay, right, I'm going to cut this in half so that it's narrow enough to fit onto my butterfly here. So I'll cut that in half as well. Okay. Right, take the backing off here and then add it down to my butterfly. Now you can see it's obvious that I've got tape behind that butterfly body, and nobody wants to see that, do they? So then I'm going to use my fabulous Lisa Horton glue, and I'm going to add the body that I've already cut out in dark pink, so that that's going to cover the majority of that tape. You're not going to see very much of it, so don't worry about it. You might see a little bit either side, but somebody's going to have to look really closely to see what it is. Okay, so there's my body of my butterfly, and again I've gone with pink because it matches the rest of my card. Okay, so it can be done, it takes practice, but just go for it. Don't worry about it too much, because it really isn't going to spoil the overall effect. So that's the main bit done. The rest of my card is here. Now again, I've used Maria's fabulous technique. I will put the link to Maria's video for this technique at the end of my video when I upload it to YouTube. Okay, so I'm just going to shape the wings of this butterfly. Obviously when you post it, it's going to flatten out, but I just want it to have a little bit of depth on the bottom of that card there. Okay, so if I put my 3D pads in the middle, and I'm going to double layer these so that they are a bit sort of, lift it up a little bit. So I'll just cut the other one in half, and then I can double layer that one as well. And I don't think you need worry about gluing the wings down to the card, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere, if I'm honest. Okay, a bit further up. So I want it so that it's not overhanging the outside of the card, but I want it so that it's overhanging the frame. Okay, now you can see here I've added some little hearts. These little hearts are out of the Simply Heartfelt die set, and they're these two. Okay, and I've just cut them several times. So these are all one size. There's this bigger size here, and then there's a smaller size, and I've just cut them in the two colours that the rest of the card's made up of, just to give this side a little bit of balance. All right, so on the front I want my sentiment for the card, which is going to say happy birthday, because it's a happy birthday card. And then inside, because I didn't want to leave this totally blank, I've added with love, both of these from the bold phrases, and then I'm going to add that down underneath. So if I add this first, and then I can add a little bit of glue on the back of my hearts, and all I've done here is I've cut them twice and just layered them on top of each other, just so that they look a little bit different, but layered on top but slightly to one side. Okay, so it's sort of like a drop shadow, but not a drop shadow, because I didn't want to use black, and believe me, this is black in the background here, not grey. So it's sort of the colour of whatever you put on your card. You put it through your embossing machine, it just sort of softens all the colours a little bit. So if I just slide that under there, and really it was, the only reason I've done this is to add a little bit of interest to the front of the card, so that it sort of follows through all the way, so that you haven't got sort of a little bit on the front and then nothing on the inside, and then all that going on the inside of the card. So just wanted to give a little bit of interest to every aspect of the card, if you know what I mean. So if I just pop these down as well, and then we're done. You might have to hold these down a little bit, because obviously you're adding these to an embossed piece, so there's sort of, you know, multi layers there, so just make sure it's secure before you sort of move away from it. Okay, so there's my butterfly with my stenciling. So I've probably not added the vellum piece totally in the right place anyway, but I don't think it makes the slightest bit of difference whether you're spot on top of your stenciling or not, because I don't think you can tell. Looking at that, I honestly don't think you can tell that it's not spot on. Okay, so please don't worry about it. Don't be too precious about things, because you'll drive yourself insane trying to get things 100% perfect every time. It's not going to happen. Okay, but yeah, I like that. I think it's a big card, and it's going to cost a bit to post because it's quite thick, but I think it's worth it for somebody special. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I've given you some ideas on how to move forward with your stenciling and your die cutting, and please don't worry about things. It will be absolutely fine, I promise. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you all very soon. Bye now.